Here we go.
So, when's the party?
Gossip Girl started way back in 2000 when I was working as an editor. Part of my job was coming up with new ideas for book series. I was in a brainstorming meeting with a bunch of my colleagues, and we started talking about how girls were starting to talk online about themselves and their friends. I don't think the term blogging even existed yet.
I'd kind of heard about Gossip Girl as a publishing phenomenon. So they sent me the books, I read the first one, and although I wasn't necessarily thinking, like, how do I do another teen drama right on the heels of having just done one, there was something about the books that really struck me, and I thought there could be a real show here.
Everyone knows Serena, and everyone is talking.
I like the way that technology was incorporated into the show, that the way these kids, communicated with each other. I think Cecily, the author of the books, predated the blogs well before that they've reached their apex now. Yeah, she was really ahead of the trend.
I would like to say that I sort of foresaw the future and I knew what was going to happen, but it's really a little bit coincidence that this became kind of like this huge thing.
She kind of imagined, well, what if kids used internet-based technology to communicate rumors about each other?
This is like a 12 or 13-year-old concept when blogging and websites and texting was like a thing of the future, and it really didn't exist yet. So it's actually very forward-thinking, which people probably don't know.
We sort of used the first book as the basis for the pilot, and one of the main things that we had to think about was how to get into the characters. Then I went to New York for a couple weeks to do some research. I had a great afternoon with Cecily von Zagazar, who wrote the books. We had lunch at Barney's, and we walked all the way up into the 90s, and she showed me her old school and all the places that they used to hang out. Then I met a couple girls after that and interviewed them.
I got to read extensive 20-page interviews, which is just mind-blowing. Things that if we put it in our show, people would be like, that's impossible, that would never happen.
Obviously it's television, it's glamorized a bit and whatnot, but it's that is in essence what these 14-year-old kids are going to these parties and unchaperoned.
I have spoken to a few of them and said, is it real? And they say, well, high school's and this is fun and interesting, and we don't exactly get to wear that to school. But for the most part, they do have these cotillions and parties, and their parents are always jet-setting, and they have limos and credit cards, with bottomless accounts, and it's quite an interesting life to live.
The Upper East Side of New York, it's old money New York. It's, it's a place that has grand traditions, families that have had money for centuries, and therefore it has a real caste system.
Cecily, the author of the novels, went to a similar school. She based this loosely on people that she knew and herself.
When I started developing the characters, I started thinking about the people that I knew in high school, but really what I was mostly concerned with was who's going to care about these rich girls who seem to have everything that they want. And so it was really important for me to kind of go deep inside their heads and really show what motivates them and show that they're really just like everyone else inside.
Even though the network had approached Josh and then Josh had approached me about doing this pilot, we still had to go in and pitch because the network needed to know what was our take on the characters, what did we think the pilot story was going to be.
All you need to do is maybe you could loosen up a little, Shake it out.
You don't get to start casting until the script is actually picked up. So the first thing we did was Josh and I started working on our outline, and for Gossip Girl we made a scrapbook.
We came in with like a crazy picture book and poster boards. I think that they sensed that we were really passionate about the material and that this was something that we really wanted to do.
The casting process in any TV pilot is so difficult and requires so much work. When you see the pilot, you just see the tip of the iceberg. You see 6 beautiful teenagers at the center of Gossip Girl, and what you don't know is our casting people, David and Lindsay, they saw 975 actors and actresses, and Josh and Stephanie and I saw probably around 300.
Do you ever feel like your whole life's planned out for you, man?
This is not a platform for one of your anti-capitalist rants, okay?
Nate, Blair can never know, okay? Don't you understand it's the whole reason that I went to boarding school in the first place?
And that got whittled down to the 6 people who come to work every week in New York City on Gossip Girl.
Do you remember me? She remembers me.
When we go into casting a project, our first goal is to find the best actors and to find people that are really unique.
Hey, how you doing? I was in yesterday with Serena.
How could I forget?
Penn Badgley, who plays Dan Humphrey, is a dark soul. Penn.
It was really hard to find someone who was attractive, but still likable and relatable and had the dry wit that Dan has.
We needed someone that both boys would like and girls would love.
Penn was someone that I'd worked with before and was very happy to get to come back.
He's a very serious actor. He's a little brooding, but he's funny and he's thoughtful.
I like the script, but the character, I was like, well, you know, I've played this guy before. I would like to make some changes, and they were just minor changes, and they were more than happy to accommodate.
He really grounds the show, and Dan is our way into the show. I mean, for a lot of the audience, his journey into the Upper East Side, his experience, is very much the audience's experience.
Dan is just slightly less appealing in the books because he's a chain smoker, he drinks coffee. He's this obsessed, poetic, tortured artist, which is a very fun role and I think maybe more suitable to film.
The love story between Serena and Dan in the show is lasting for much longer than it did in the books. In the books, it was pretty much over, like, by the end of book 2.
He's got to be awkward and humble, but he can't be too much of that because Serena, the queen bee of all of this, has to fall in love with him.
I love it when you talk dirty.
You just love when a girl talks to you.
Actually, I prefer them when they're not talking.
Ed Westwick, who plays Chuck. First time he came in, he read for Nate. This guy is an unbelievable actor. What a great presence and what a unique kind of an actor that you don't normally see on TV and or teen dramas.
Well, Chuck in the books is described as having aftershave commercial handsome looks, whatever that means. I mean, I guess the idea is he's sort of like perfect on the outside, but then has this sort of like threatening smile.
Chuck, we felt like in the pilot, we wanted him to be a real villain.
Originally, Chuck was just supposed to be a recurring character. He wasn't supposed to be a guest star, but we all fell in love with him, as did the producers, and we knew we had to make him a regular.
You don't get nearly enough credit for your wit. I auditioned with my British accent and my American accent.
Eventually, we decided that it worked better with an American accent.
We tried to lock him down, and we had massive immigration issues.
Going into shooting the pilot, we didn't have a visa for him, and we were terrified that we weren't going to be able to use him, so the network said we have to recast this role. So Lindsay and I started reading people on tape in our office, and we would email those reads to the producers who wouldn't watch them because they only wanted Ed. A day or two before Ed was about to shoot, his visa came through, and we were able to use him.
The whole kind of experience so far has just been, it's been very, very fun. You know, it's been a roller coaster.
He's like pure evil. He's a throwback to the James Spader, 80s teen, nihilistic kind of villains.
Don't cave to your parents' wishes if they're not your desires. Excuse me? Where's my boy?
Chase Crawford, who plays Nate, the minute he first came in and read, we're like, this guy is Nate.
It's quite the process for me. I don't know exactly how it was for everyone else, but for me it was like, went back in like 7 times.
We fell in love with Chase the first time he came in to read for Nate.
I mentioned to my sister and some of her friends like, oh my God, no way. Like, Gossip Girl, are you kidding? They're making it into a TV show? Nate? So then I realized exactly how big the books were to these teenage girls.
Chase is a heartthrob. I mean, you look at him, you know everyone's gonna love him.
He hadn't done a lot before. He'd been in like 1 movie. He was over on the swim team, I think, going to school when he decided to try his hand at acting.
Nate's a little bit different in the books. I think he's a little bit more indifferent.
Actually, in the books, Nate is pretty much stoned all the time. He's probably a little bit more complex in the show than in the books.
You get that there's a real sense of decency in Nate from Chase. And I think that that is a quality that allows you to understand that this is a guy who's on a journey and he makes you want to take that journey with him.
You know, I actually didn't want to come to Blair's party as much as I just wanted to get out of my house.
Taylor Momsen was a real find for Jenny because she has a really sweet, charming, likable quality, but she also has a dark side.
Taylor really captures that kind of like naivete and that like Jenny is sort of an ingenue, but she finds herself right in the middle of all the action and like with the gorgeous guy and you know, that which is what happens to Jenny in the book. She's always like in the middle of the party or like in the singing with the band or something like that, and she just kind of doesn't really know how she got there, but she's going with it.
My first time I met any of the cast was I walked into the makeup room and was in stockings and my dress, and I like wiped out and slipped and my feet literally like scissor cut the air and I like fell down and everyone was like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, way to make an entrance, Taylor.
It's amazing to me that she's only 14 years old. She's a girl on the cusp of becoming a woman.
You feel like, oh, she's so sweet. Dan needs to take care of Jenny. She's in trouble. And then she turns it on, and you're like, I'm totally afraid of Jenny Humphrey. What is she gonna do to me?
And that's what's so great is that I get to do both. I get to play the, the nice girl, and then I get to play the not so nice girl too. It's really, really fun.
Let's do it.
I'm not a stop along the way. I'm a destination, and if you refuse to attend, I'm gonna have to find a replacement. Girls, the waiting list.
Leighton Meester, who plays Blair, is a riot. Leighton never misses a moment. She gets every color of the character.
There was an issue when we were auditioning Leighton Meester for Blair because she's a blonde originally.
Everybody, that really wanted me for it, they were like, oh, she'll dye her hair, it's fine. But everybody that had to be convinced, from the studio and the network, they were like, well, she has blonde hair. We just, what? Like, they couldn't get it. I started out with a wig, and that just went all wrong.
And so for Leighton's final audition, we had her dye her hair brown, and it just worked.
So I ended up having to dye my hair before I even knew that I had the part.
And to ask a young actress with long blonde hair to dye her hair brown, you have to be pretty darn sure that you can get her this role.
You're kind of not invited, and Jenny used up all the invites.
Actually, you can go now.
It was important to find someone who could be as evil and mischievous as Blair can be, but with Leighton, you get that vulnerability.
She's evil, she's insecure, she's always striving, she's always worried about status. But I think because Leighton plays that character with so much joy and she's so funny about it.
Blair is probably a character that's the most like her character in the book. I think the Blair in the book is really fun, and she's kind of someone who's always scheming, always has a plan, always has something that she wants to achieve, and it never quite works out, no matter how hard she tries to manipulate the situation.
Always understand what's driving her and what's making her tick.
Blair, stop. You can talk to me.
Blake Lively, who plays Serena Vanderwoodson, is a force of nature. She's one of those people that walks in a room and everybody turns, and she is Serena in that way.
Serena was a character that we felt needed a bit of work because in the books, she's a really fun, funny character, but she's almost kind of Blair's foil in that Serena, things just come to her so easily, nothing's ever a problem. She kind of treats people badly without really thinking about it, and then somehow things always go her way anyways.
It's rare that we both read a script and have the exact same person in mind, and Blake was it.
Blake Lively was absolutely our first choice. She was, at the time, not interested in doing television.
When I was approached for Gossip Girl, I'd only ever done movies, and I wasn't sure that I wanted to do a TV show because it's 6 years of your life that you commit to being one character with one cast, playing one role.
But then I think once she read the script and met with us, she wanted to do it as badly as we wanted her to do it.
I read the first book. All my friends had read the books in school. I did want to get a good idea of who Serena was, who the people were around her, how they act in relation to one another, and how they affect each other's lives.
She is the ultimate California girl. So transforming her into a New York socialite and giving her that attitude and that edge and that sort of dark partying past was not necessarily something that was in Blake's experience, but something that she was excited about, and the challenge of that and taking that on.
She sends herself to boarding school, and she faces a lot of persecution from her friends for disappearing and coming back and not going out and not partying and not sleeping with everyone. So she really goes against the crowd to try to do the right thing.
Spotted at Grand Central, bags in hand, Serena Vanderwoodson.
One challenge that the book presented was how to incorporate the Gossip Girl narrator, because of course, when you're reading a book, you are reading what Gossip Girl wrote, and how do you translate that into an image?
We auditioned hundreds of girls for it, from
300.
Yeah, everyone from people who hadn't done anything before to very recognizable names.
Kristen Bell actually reached out to us. She had read the script and really responded to it.
She's kind of been able to play the part in a way that really sets the tone for the show.
I'm a personal fan of Kristen Bell, so I like it, and I think it's a good choice.
There's nothing Gossip Girl likes more than a good cat fight. And this could be a classic.
When we started the process, there was a strong part of me that said, this is a series about New York. We should have a New York cast, and instead we're casting completely out of Los Angeles and bringing all of these people in. And I must say that my New Yorker pride was a bit insulted by that fact, just knowing the kind of casts that we have here and just feeling like I'm sure we can find this incredible group of young actors here who can do this and have the authenticity of having grown up here, living here, knowing here. But once I met our cast, I was like, okay, I get it.
Well, it must be a shock for someone who thinks she knows everything. They wound up with all LA, but they got me. I'm a local, so to find a pilot that was not LA shoot, something that was close to home, was just perfect.
I was really passionate about wanting to shoot the show in New York, the most exciting city in the world, at the most exciting time in your life, you know, teenagers in that world. That was something that was pretty cool, and it was something I hadn't seen before on TV.
The only place you could see New York on television is if you wanted to look over the dead bodies, you know, when people were solving crimes.
8 Henry, take 1.
The city's really opened their arms up to the show. There's crazy street noise, buses and subways and people screaming and walking into the shot.
When we had to shoot the pilot out here, we knew that they're gonna try to end up shooting here if it got picked up, and I remember kind of being a little bit hesitant. And they put us up at the Gramercy, and about after a week, I think I fell in love with it.
We came to New York pretty much transplants. We all stayed in the same hotel for the pilot. It was like instant connection. It was like going away to camp or something. Everybody was kind of discovering the city together.
I love New York. Like, New York's the best. You can't beat it. The energy and the city and everything is just so cool. The first day of filming was, we were filming at the Met, and it was so cold. I remember that it was absolutely freezing. It was my first time I got to work with Leighton, with Blake, and it was great. You know, it was a really great scene.
Hi, I'm Serena.
I know. Hi, I'm Jen.
The thing about the characters that was exciting against the backdrop of the Upper East Side is they're almost like royalty. They come from the old bloodlines of money. There's a lot of tradition, there's a lot of formality, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance that kind of enshrouds their world. So they do feel, in a way, like at least within their own bubble, like celebrities or like royalty.
A really fascinating visual interpretation of the Gossip Girl books was these very real 21st century kids of Gossip Girl to be living and walking through an old New York City.
So we came up with this notion of a modern-day Marie Antoinette.
We wanted the backdrop and the setting to feel timeless.
And that really helped guide a lot of decisions.
That had impact on our color palette and the sort of decor we use.
Right.
And
it was sort of like a spin on Marie Antoinette.
it really worked. It gave us a real framework in which to approach every location and every scene.
And the colors were
the colors.
pink and blue. And we actually brought that theme into Blair's bedroom.
We chose this very, very lavish, overly decorated townhouse for the Waldorf residents. All the food we did was all these incredible colors and puffs and creams, and everything had that kind of lavishness.
Both Stephanie and Josh wanted to incorporate pop music as well as indie rock and a lot of like local New York bands.
Figuring out what the score for this show was going to be was kind of a real problem, because we felt like anything that traditional score, we would lose all the kind of modernness that we were going for.
The Transcenders are these really great composers, and they've really understood what the sound of the show is.
I'm Mike Frattantuno.
Brian Leipman.
Terrence Yoshiaki. And we are Transcenders. We're the composing team for Gossip Girl.
It just felt like the perfect marriage. They were our only choice. Once we heard them, we had to have them.
We sort of approach it from more of a band standpoint. We sometimes sit here and just play along with the scene.
As we watch the scene, we start shaping it and taking instruments out and really trying to convey the scene without being over the top or trying to like really hit the viewer over the head. Like, this is a dramatic scene, so you know, here's some dramatic music.
Most of the instruments, the way we would record them if we were making a pop record, rather than, oh, we're gonna score this, let's get some cheesy sounding, you know, TV stuff. You know, we break out the guitars and the amps and like really try to get a sound that you would hear on a record.
We all played in bands together for so long that the collaboration just seemed natural to do it that way.
The sound of Gossip Girl was inspired by one piece of music that we had on our demo to get the composing job. All the people on the show, Josh and Stephanie, they seemed to really gravitate towards a piece of music that later we titled Steps of the Met, because it was the scene for the first meeting of Serena and Blair on the steps of the Met in the first show.
You're kind of not invited. Since until 12 hours ago, everyone thought you were at boarding school.
It also became the main title of the show, and it seems to encapsulate like that sound.
You know you love me. XOXO. Gossip Girl.
I was really impressed. You never know how anything's going to turn out, and I was really impressed when I saw the pilot. It was flashy, but it had substance.
Getting to see the product with music added in, with editing, with the directing, and getting to see everybody else's work that we didn't really see on set was really incredible.
It's just so strange to see it come to life, you know. It's the first time you're really watching yourself as that character or anyone else as those characters.
What I think was refreshing about it was the way it encompassed a lot of elements of society.
Don't you think we're taking this class warfare thing a little too far?
There's one sequence in the pilot, which is when Chuck takes Serena into the kitchen and Nate is telling Blair the truth about what happened between him and Serena back at the Shepherd wedding, and Dan is going in search of Serena, and it's this sort of suite of scenes, and that was cut by our editor, Tim Good.
I'm so sorry. Are you okay?
That was like such a home run sequence for the whole deal. It's so great, you know, and I was just like blown away by it. So yeah, we were all pretty like, wow, it's got some potential.
Being a part of the cast, we get these opportunities that like really only the kids in the show would have. Like socialites who've lived in New York for years and been part of like the upper echelons don't often get to do the kind of stuff that we get to do, because we're in a show about the city, in the city, almost by the city.
The whole experience of the books being made into a TV show has just been incredible. It's been really fantastic.
The girls, they really do like the show.
The experience has been so amazing, and it's pretty mind-blowing to have the best wardrobe out there.
What Gossip Girl is about for us, and why we think it's become such a huge internationally best-selling book series, and why it's become a hit TV series, is that balance between fantasy on the one hand and relatability on the other hand.
We can relate to them no matter what walk of life we're from, because they're going through most of the same issues as anybody else, but it's higher stakes because everything they do is being so closely watched.
It's a world that we've been pulled into. It's not just like we're acting in a show. To step back and watch it all grow is really an amazing thing.
What happens next? Only time will tell. XOXO. Gossip Girl.